Artificial Sun, Book 1, Chapter 1. A strong gust of wind whipped Althea's dark hair back as she leaped over a thick, fallen tree trunk. Instead of landing on her feet, as she had planned, her knees buckled out from underneath her, and her leg twisted with a sickening snap. She opened her mouth to let out a scream, but held her hand over it so the beast chasing her would not hear her. Tears fell out of her eyes, but she extended her hand over the injured limb and tried to focus her energy. Within seconds, her leg was healed, and she stood up quickly, her breathing heavy. The forest was quiet, oddly so. Where was the creature hunting her down? She could have sworn it was right behind her. There was a rustle in the trees coming from the direction she ran from. The little bit of hope she had that the creature had taken off disintegrated. She backed up slowly, before turning around and breaking out into a run. Adrenaline fueled her steps, and she used the last of her strength mingled with the adrenaline to carry her. She saw light peeking out a little bit further down the forest, and she found herself running towards it, her feet barely carrying her. The light moved closer, and just as she was about to exit the forest, she was pinned up against a tree a little farther from the light. "Shh," a voice said as a hand covered her mouth. Her heartbeat increased in speed, but she was too weak to fight. The light disappeared as the beast passed by it, casting a shadow before it was gone. The person released their grip from Althea and took their hand from her mouth. Her body slumped forward as she was suddenly relying on her own strength once again, her back relieved from the hard bark of the tree.
I could have handled it, you know.
She glared at her savior. Bayard was his name. He was another student at Edogine, though he was a timed accelerator.
A thank you would be nice.
Althea always hated Edogine. She called it the Artificial Sun. At Edogine, those who were born with superpowers were sent here as children to train and form part of the army stationed to protect the queen. Althea never met her, but she heard tales of the queen's beauty, but also of her stoned heart. Althea wished she was blessed with the queen's beauty, but her hair was short and dark, her eyes were a gray color, and her nose was buttoned. Edogine used creatures like dragons and zombies to train their students and shape them into the toughest warriors, which also meant many died on a daily basis. Only the toughest survived, and nowhere was safe. Each group of students of the same age group were known as classes, and each class was assigned to a mentor who was responsible for training them. Althea studied Bayard's face as if to figure out why he would save her. It was clear she couldn't hold her own just now, and anyone else in his position would watch her die and not put themselves in danger. Before she could say anything, a blood-curdling roar shook the trees and instilled fear in her. Her eyes went wide as the beast swooped above her, and she ducked involuntarily, though it was clear that the dragon was retreating. Its wings were roughly 20 feet long, and its thick, black talons barely scraped the trees due to how low it was flying. Its golden and green scales faded away as the dragon flew off, and they were teleported back into the training arena, which was almost like an empty stadium with a transparent dome covering it. Althea had to stop her knees from giving in as relief washed over her. She thought she was going to die in today's training.
Everybody, gather around.
Their mentor, Grunner, spoke. His voice was loud and demanding, and all his students made their way towards him. Grunner controlled anything with a mind. He used this to his advantage most of the time, though it couldn't always save everyone.
How many did we lose today?
His voice was softer, but there was a hint of worry in it. Despite having to view the fledglings, as they were called, as weapons and having no emotional attachment to them, Grunner loved his students as if they were his children. He hated losing them, and always made sure to help out when he could. If anyone else in power found out about that, Grunner would lose his head.
Nobody, sir.
Flynn, a telepathist, spoke up. He was out of breath and scarred, but he still clung tightly to the hilt of the sword he wielded during battle. Relief flashed over Grunner's face, and he fought off a slight smile.
Good. You all did good.
His voice was rough and strained due to age. The roots of his auburn hair were starting to gray, and his skin sagged around his eyes and forehead. His eyes flicked to Althea, and she involuntarily sucked in a breath.
How'd you do today, Althea?
He singled her out, and she let the breath out in a sigh. She knew she was disappointing him. She'd always known. She had trouble grasping her powers. While most people had one, she was born with two, or so she was led to believe. She was gifted with the power of healing, coupled with the ability to shift into anything and anyone. She rarely used her powers because she could never master them. Instead, she focused on using her trusted gold-plated dagger. Though, a dagger could never be enough to stop a full-grown dragon. Althea barely left a scratch on the beast, but he let her go. She should have been dead, but she wasn't.
She did great, sir.
Bayard spoke up when he sensed Althea's silence. She looked at him quickly, seeing through the lie.
I'd be dead if it weren't for her.
He didn't look at her when he said that, and she felt her anger boil. She didn't want to be protected by him. She didn't want to feel weak and helpless. She didn't want to be saved.
Thank you for your answer, Althea.
Grunner spoke, and the other students let out a bit of laughter, mingled with the relief they felt from surviving today's training. When the laughter died out, Grunner spoke again.
Dismissed,
he said. Everyone started to disperse, including Althea, when Grunner spoke again.
Not you, Althea.
She halted in her stride, nearly wincing at the sentence.
Good luck.
Flynn raised his brows a bit before patting her on the shoulder and walking off. She ignored him and turned to face Grunner. When everyone was gone, Grunner started to speak as he walked towards the exit as well. Althea followed after him.
You nearly died today,
he stated plainly as he exited the arena. They were greeted by the sight of fresh air, sunlight, and children playing in the gardens. In the center of the quad was a large fountain, which led straight to the sea. Sometimes mermaids would emerge and greet the children. Other times, children were trained to fight off monsters that came from the sea and into the fountain.
I did.
Althea spoke plainly. There was no sense in hiding the truth from Grunner. She trusted him. He was one of the only people she could say that about. He always had a soft spot for her and treated her like she was his own. Althea knew that every time training began, Grunner was scared for her. Scared that it would finally be the day she died.
What happened?
Grunner barely looked at her as he led her to a more secluded part of the garden. In front of him was a bed of flowers which had recently bloomed with the help of the spring fairies.
The dragon found me, sir.
Althea admitted, not meeting Grunner's gaze.
I stabbed it in the neck with my dagger, but it was like a flea bite to it.
Grunner let out a low grunt as he absorbed this information. He then made eye contact with her.
Then what happened?
Then it neared me and looked at me.
She relived the memory.
But then it just flew away.
Althea, you should have been dead.
Grunner spoke lowly, looking at her worriedly.
I controlled the dragon's mind to leave you be. I can't do that in the real world.
I know.
She admitted, shame filling her chest. She hated being this person. She hated that she couldn't master her powers, and that she couldn't be enough.
You could have taken its form.
Grunner finally said, and Althea knew he would bring it up.
You could have transformed into a dragon and taken it head on.
I couldn't even transform into a bug if I tried.
Althea snapped quickly, but there was a hint of desperation in her voice.
I'm not fit to be a part of the Queen's army.
Don't say that.
If it weren't for you, I would have died in training long ago.
Did you ever say that?
Grunner grabbed her arm, his gaze and voice angry as he focused on her. He lowered his voice.
You are here for a reason. You will join the Queen's army, and you will protect her. You will master your powers. Do you understand me?
There was both determination and desperation in his voice. Althea never understood why Grunner was so protective over her, or why she had two powers. Edogine was a mystery, and Althea hated mysteries. She didn't say anything in response to that. She knew better than to go up against Grunner. He softened his voice and released her arm.
Look at these flowers, Althea.
He instructed, and she looked at them.
Most of them have blossomed, except this one.
He pointed to a stem with a stunted bud, where a flower should be.
It's slower than the rest, but once it blossoms...
A fairy fluttered towards the flower and sprinkled a glitter-like substance on it before flying away. The flower opened up, its petals bright pink and beautiful, flecks of glitter in it. She knew Grunner controlled the fairy to let the flower bloom. He plucked the flower off its stem and held it out to Althea.
Once it blossoms, it's the most beautiful of them all. You are blooming slowly, but once you've bloomed...
He placed the flower in her hand and let out a laugh.
Then I feel sorry for those who would dare to stand in your way.
He gently closed her hand over the flower and gave her a stern look.
There's only so much I can make you do. Literally.
He let go of her hand. Althea stayed rooted to the spot as she watched Grunner retreat. She never would have compared herself to a flower. If anything, she'd suspected she was a weed. But if Grunner believed in her, the least she could do was try. As much as she hated Edogine, she'd be damned if she allowed herself to die here.